Hi, I'm Dr. Margaret, and welcome to The Love Life. So, you'll notice that some of our episodes will be filmed live with the studio format, and some will be virtual. And all of you by now know that because of this pandemic, we've all had to pivot into different types of spaces because we just can't be close to one another right now. And so, because we want to pay respect to the severity of this pandemic, because we know that this pandemic has caused the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, and because we want to do our part to stay safe, to stay distanced, we will have some of our episodes virtual and some of our episodes live. But we just, either way, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a part of our audience, and we hope to bring you a really great experience. One day, a few years ago, I ran into a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a while. We talked for a little while, and she eventually asked me about my love life. Well, I knew what she was asking me. And any other time, I would have said, "Oh girl, I'm still single." But at that moment, something clicked. While I was not in a romantic relationship, my life was certainly not void of love. There's an abundance of ways that my heart, soul, and life are full of and overflowing with love. Welcome to The Love Life. I'm Dr. Margaret, and on this show, I talk to some incredibly loving people about what that big four-letter word means to them. So join us as we explore the question, how's your love life? I'm Dr. Margaret, and welcome to The Love Life. I love men, especially Black men. As the youngest of two children who grew up with a brother as my first friend, I've always embraced the idea that friendship really is the foundation of my relationships with men. So I have friendships with men, like real solid, close friendships, and we talk. And during these conversations, and because I am who I am, love is usually a topic that comes up. But as I grew into a woman, I also grew more and more weary of how our society actively resists love as a way of being. And oftentimes I feel super disheartened by the way that our culture encourages men to actively relinquish their humanity and opt for power instead of love. You know, I believe that each and every one of us possesses both masculine and feminine energies. And I believe that energetically, love is both feminine and masculine. Love is receptive and nurturing and open. And love is also directive and expansive and action oriented. Love is a non binary, gender non conforming way of being. And that means that love belongs to all of us. And so today's guest is my friend, Dr. Chris Travers. And he was the first person that came to mind when I thought of having this particular conversation. Beyond it being this divine suggestion, I knew from previous conversations with Chris that he is seeking to embody a love ethic. And he's allowing it to inform his own healing, his own understanding of masculinity, and specifically what it means to be a Black man. So I would like to welcome my guest, Dr. Chris Travers, to The Love Life. Hey, Chris.
What's going on, Dr. Margaret? Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here. I've been thinking about this conversation for quite some time, so just ready to get into it.
Awesome. Let's get into it. So, Chris, you already know this show is about love. It's about the love life. So first, I want you to share just a little bit about who you are. And then I want you to answer my question. How's your love life?
As you mentioned, my name is Christopher Travers, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, or as we say, Baltimore, Maryland. I spent most of my life there. I was raised as the youngest, although I do have a younger sibling. Much of my childhood experiences were me as the youngest. Grew up in the church, was raised in the church, and then once I hit that adolescent period, didn't have to go to church anymore, so I stopped. But a lot of my life lessons and just the ways in which I'm oriented are anchored in faith. Didn't love school much growing up, but got into college and found my stride, got some support, some mentorship, ended up gaining 3 different degrees from psychology to my Ph.D. in higher education and student affairs. I still consider myself an educator, spent some time as a faculty member, but I currently serve as a director of young adults at the new Salem Missionary Baptist Church in Columbus, Ohio.
Yes, doctor, Reverend Doctor.
Yes, yeah, all of that.
So, Chris, how's your love life? How's your love life?
Yes, the $1 million question. So I think of it as a metaphor. I think of it as sort of a home being under construction is how I think of my love life. There are some rooms that are solid, some rooms that are well taken care of, and there are also some rooms that are under renovation. And so I'm in the process of doing some excavation, doing some work, some remodeling, some reimagining to some rooms. And with that comes some frustration at times. It requires a deeper level of patience. But I can see where I'm going. And so I'm excited about the possibilities. And I believe that in the very near future, folks will be able to re-enter into some of those rooms that are in need of some deeper excavation.
Dog, Dr. Chris, you just came out the gate. Okay, this how you coming? This how you coming out the gate? Okay.
I'm just trying to speak my truth. I'm just trying to speak my truth,
And I am here for it. Thank you. Thank you, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to speak our truth. So one of the reasons I thought about you for this conversation is because you and I have had several conversations about love. And I think we're both actively orienting our lives towards an ethic of love, a praxis, if you will, of love. Yeah. Like, what does love actually look like lived out, right? And so one of the books that awakened this in me was All About Love by Bell Hooks. And I remember you and I had a conversation and I suggested this book to you. And I know that you recently now become probably one of her biggest fans and you have consumed all of her work. So I want you to share a little bit about, just how did you first learn or understand love? What experiences, what work, what relationships have informed your understanding of love?
Yeah, I would say, as a younger person, I only really thought about it within the confines of a romantic relationship. So if you were to ask me, really from like when I started talking to women to like 13, 14 to like a year or two ago, if you were to say, how is your love life? I would have thought about where I'm at romantically, the status of my romantic relationship. But even within that, is very much sort of situated within a physical dynamic, right? A physical relationship. I don't really know if I had really strong friendships with the folks that I dated. And I think I also overlooked some of the love that was rich right in front of me in the various friendships that I had with both men and women. So I would say early on, it was definitely situated within mostly romantic relationship, but within the last 2 or 3 years, because of thinkers and writers and scholars like yourself and Bell Hooks and a plethora of other Black women who I've been blessed to be in relationship with during my time in graduate school, I've begun to sort of reimagine what love is, and begun the process of unlearning some of the things that I was taught and socialized to believe as a young Black man growing up. And so I would say now, my approach to love, my understanding of love is really about just the ways in which I can give and receive it across the spectrum of all types of relationships with all types of people. It's a choice. It's an act of will. It's a decision that I make each and every day to approach my living and my practice with love. And so while romantic relationships can be a component of that, it's certainly not just a romantic relationship thing.
Yeah. And like just thinking about what you're saying and taking it back to your house example, it's like we walk into a home that's like fully decorated and it's like, this is love. This is what love is. And this reimagination of love is like your way of redecorating, right? Like you're renovating and you're also like, this rug doesn't necessarily look good here anymore. I want to get a new rug. So it's like a refresh, if you will, because I think, and again, the love life isn't excluding romantic love, but it's just saying that we have to expand our understanding of love.
Yeah.
And, part of that is like doing the work, like you said, to excavate and unearth why we believe what we believe about love.
Yeah, and I would say one of the concepts that Bell Hooks writes a lot about. She has a whole chapter dedicated to it and all about love is honesty, truth. And so first and foremost, being honest with yourself and dealing with some of the ugliness that is inside of you, some of the flaws and insecurities that show up in relationship. And I've had to engage in that. I've had to see myself in different ways and work on that and recognize that a person can't do that for me. Right. I do believe in the power of doing it in community, but I can't hold someone responsible for doing that work for me. And so a lot of it is just coming to grips with who I am and who I want to be and how there's a gap in between that requires some work.
Yeah. So Chris, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I do see you as a man, specifically a Black man, who's trying to understand this, from like a personal level, not just this intellectual exercise, but that you yourself are trying to learn and embody and become love, right? And so how do you wrestle with your masculinity in that? Like, how do you wrestle with how do you position your masculinity within that whole journey that you're on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, it's recognizing models that are unhealthy and trying to find new models of what it looks like and what it means to be a man, right? And so I think of Jesus oftentimes, and I start there with my model of what it looks like to be a man, what it looks like to live a life as a man, and how love needs to be at the core of all of that. And then I keep myself around trusted and wise counsel, right? And so I have friends that when I'm processing something, and I'll ask, like, am I tripping? Right? And is my patriarchy coming back up? Right? Mm-hmm. Is there like a taste of misogyny in this? Right? Like help me work through how I'm processing, because it's so ingrained in who I am. I'm not even aware of it sometimes. Right? And some of that, is work with Black women. It's also Black men. But I would say for me, I have conversation with folks who I trust, who are also on the journey of trying to be better men. Right? And that's how I situate myself. I don't have a hard, fast, step-by-step breakdown of what it means to be a man. I resist all of that. I am who I am. I feel like masculinity is vast. It comes in different shapes and sizes and forms, and I have no desires to fit into a box. I actively resist it, actually.
So let's talk a little bit about the box. Like, can you think back to your early experiences because I know what you're going to say. Like, I kind of already know this story, right? Like, I know it's a common narrative where men or boys, when you're boys, you are told who you should be as a boy, right? Yeah. Like, can you think about those early experiences that began to shape your understanding of masculinity?
Yeah, absolutely. I played a lot of sports growing up. And so, I can recall times where I may have felt pain, injury. I might have been a little tired or fatigued and, sort of pushed, keep going, right? Like, don't show any emotion or level of exhaustion. And so those subtle messages made me believe that it's not okay to display my true emotions. If I feel something, I have to hide it, because to show it would be some display of weakness. So I think in that way, I learned what it meant to be a man. I can recall my best friend passing away when I think I was about 20, 22 at the time. And I can recall my mother telling me not to cry in front of his mother, right? Like to hold back those tears. And I believed it was completely harmless what she was telling me to do, but that made me again believe that it's not okay to show my emotions in this moment, even though like the moment caused for me to show some emotion. I just lost a best friend. And so that messaging, even with my relationships with women, I felt like I was often rewarded for behaviors that are very toxic. Being slightly manipulative, being a little bit of a player, right? Being a little arrogant, a little cocky. And as a young man who wanted to belong, who wanted to have friends, who wanted, girls to like them, I would respond to that, right? So if I got rewarded, I would do more of it. And so ultimately what happened though was there was an internal piece, which I believe is the Holy Spirit, which was telling me that's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're better than this, right? You're called to something greater to this. And so I had to go through this process of, trying to like resist some of that. And I can admit, even now, it still comes up. Those lessons are like deeply rooted.
Yep.
I still think about, how a woman would complete me in some way. And so if I don't have that, I'm lacking, almost as if like I'm not as strong of a man. I still think about on days when I can't really move, when I'm not okay. I gotta like, put my clothes on and keep going because the world is not ready for me to say as a Black man that I'm not okay. And so it's a challenge. But I think mostly it came in the form of sports for me and in my relationships with women that I was taught what it meant to be a man.
Yeah. And it's, your point about being rewarded for negative behavior, the thing about it is, I mean, all of us become victims of patriarchy, victims of misogyny, and we also are complicit. Women are also complicit in moving forward this understanding that men have to be this. There's, like you said, the box that men have to fit into. And if he's not that type of man, we hear all about the alpha man or, all of these stereotypes that really suggest that men should not show emotion, right? Not display emotion, but it comes out, cause we're human beings. And so your emotions have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, like your emotional life? So if we think about love is a choice. Love is an action word. Yeah. Love is, a beautiful thing. And love evokes and invokes emotion, right? So talk about your emotional life. Like, what does it look like? What does your emotional life look like as you try to do this work of rejecting and not conforming to society's standards of what masculinity is?
Yeah, no, I would say it's probably the best it's ever been, where it is right now. And I think a lot of that is because I've gotten to a point now where I am aware of who I am and I am much more comfortable and confident in who I am. I think part of it was spending time learning more about like who I am in Christ and who Christ made me to be. And so like becoming clear on that helped me to realize God loves me because of the way that I show up. I believe God loves me because I lead with my heart. I believe God loves me because I cry when I feel like I need to cry. I feel like God loves me because I'll pause anything that I'm doing, whether it's work or ministry related, to spend time checking in with the emotional conditions of the people that I'm working with. And so I would say, honestly, I walk in my emotions. I live in my emotions. I don't shy away from them. I'm honest about how I feel. I'm honest about how other people make me feel. And I know for some people it's a little uncomfortable because he's just so in tune with his feelings. He always want to talk about his emotions and his feelings. But I believe as you walk in your truth about where you are emotionally, it opens the door for others to walk in their truth about where they are emotionally. And I think part of the reason we're suffering as much as we are as a society is because we don't spend enough time dealing with our emotions. The world is all over the place. I was just saying this the other day when I was preaching. If you ain't cried one time, you ain't cried in front of anybody, like not once, from this pandemic, from this summer of heightened racial injustice, from the economic conditions that we find ourselves in, from the politics, from white supremacy, you haven't cried one time in front of people. So I think I am the healthiest I have ever been. And I probably cry at least once every other week, Margaret, from being honest. I probably do. Sometimes, and it's not always because I'm sad. I love God, so I cry about it.
Yeah, and it's cleansing. It's cleansing.
Absolutely.
That's so good. That's so good. That was so good. So good. So, I have lots of conversations with women. I'm in a category of Black women who wants to be partnered with a Black man, right? Like we love Black men and we're like, come on, I need a good partner, right? But we have conversations about, and not even just from the perspective of wanting a partner, but wanting to see, especially cis hetero Black men, be more empathetic, tap more into this emotional nature that you're describing.
Yeah.
Have more compassion. And so what does that look like for you? How do you embrace and cultivate empathy in your own life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of it is I'm heavily engaged in relationship with folks. So I mentioned, being an educator, I've worked with students really for the last 10, 12 years. And so I think part of what helps me is finding myself in conversation with so many different people and creating a space for them to be able to open up and share and learning about some of the various things that folks wrestle with. And so I think because I've been blessed to be engaged and and in relationship, really meaningful relationship with so many diverse individuals, I have a greater sense of the range of issues that folks are wrestling with. I think my faith also helps me to be empathetic. I think my struggles and my challenges and being, and confronting them daily also helps me to be empathetic. Particularly when I think about, you know, the opportunities that I have, the people that I'm blessed to be in relationship with. It's not because I've been so great. It's not because I'm so dope. It's not because, I possess some greater ability than the next person. I'm just blessed. I'm just blessed. And so I think it allows me to sort of like tap into what folks are dealing with. I would also add, I think having a counseling background, so getting a master's degree in counseling and psychology and learning about the importance of empathy, counseling folks, and then probably also my call to ministry. So I think in some ways I was constructed in that way. I think, the plan that God had for my life was one where it was going to require me to be deeply connected to the experiences of people. But one thing I would say to folks, and I think for anybody, but if we want to hone in on Black cis hetero men, I think we have to slow down, resist this capitalist society. Like, slow down for a second, pause, rest, listen to ourselves, listen to others, take the time to actually like hear stories, not because you have an agenda or a motive or you trying to like move and position yourself, but just pause and listen to folks. And I think that can also help you begin to realize that folks have a long journey in history. And oftentimes what you're confronting in front of you has nothing to do with you, but a host of stuff that people are wrestling with, right? And so the last thing I'll say is folks need therapy.
Can you say that again?
Folks need therapy. So part of my ability to learn more about my own stuff is having somebody who's not closely connected, who's not afraid to tell me about my trash, who doesn't have like a connection, whereas our relationship might end if he or she is too honest with me. Tell me about myself. Folks need therapy. You need to like set aside some resources, explore your benefits package if you have that, and go find you a therapist. And I think that can also help folks become better in terms of empathy. And by folks, I mean Black men.
Yeah. Chris, you are just giving me all the life right now. So I want to go back to something you said about, in a way, you were constructed in that way, right? And I find that, so I'm just going to make an observation because I do know you. You're not just like somebody I picked off the internet to show up here and talk about this. Like I do know you.
You know me in real life.
I know you in real life, IRL. So one of the things I've noticed is you have an openness. You live with a posture, if you will, of like openness. And I think your faith certainly mediates that, right? But there's this sense of like, you want to be free. Like you want to live as a liberated person. And as I see you, even just moving through this journey of like tapping into love, I know that that journey is partly liberating you. You know, It's like to resist from the idea that you have to be a certain way to be a man is to actually be bound by all of these other expectations of who you are and not who God created you to be. And so I think a lot of people in general, but especially Black men, are constructed in a way that they are more emotional. They're more connected to their emotional space. They are sometimes, more in tune, have deep intuition, things that are often associated with femininity or females, right? Yeah. We say that's a female thing. But like I said in the intro, we all have these masculine and feminine energies, and they're always at work, because ultimately what it is the fullness of who we are, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I also hear you saying is that love is liberating you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll add, I think part of what, for me, what was helpful was having the right people around me at the right time to encourage me to be my full self. So it may have happened around the time that I met you when I moved to North Carolina. I just finished school, and I very much was still attempting to conform to a particular standard that I thought would help me be successful. And I think what started to happen was you and I had some conversations about love, about communion, about our faith, about gender identity, gender roles, about liberation, healing. I feel like we had a lot of conversations around healing. I had some other Black women around me. I started to read the work of a lot of Black feminist scholars, and I got deeply engaged in Black feminisms. And then I also began to cultivate a relationship with one of my academic brothers, Dr. Wilson Okello. And I want to call him by name because I owe him a lot in terms of my development, my trajectory, and where I am right now in my love life. And so what I think you, Wilson, my previous partner, other folks in my life could sense the wrestling that I was in, could sense the prison that I was trying to break out of, could sense the bondage that I wanted to be freed from, had glimpses of moments of like me fully walking in my authenticity in the ways in which it actually shifted the atmosphere of the folks around me. And I think what started to happen was you all would push me. You all would encourage me. You would speak life into me. You would tell me to run. You would tell me to go. And people don't realize how valuable that stuff is when you're on the fringes of walking in your truth. Like, we need people who are going to help us get through the finish line. We didn't really get into this, but like that's part of what communion means to me.
Yeah.
It's this connection to the vertical where I feel like God is pouring into me and I'm connected to him. But it's also this notion that like I'm held up by the horizontal, the people like you and Dr. Okello and others who keep me moving. And so for me, I think it was always inside of me. I just needed to have permission to be able to go for it. And folks like yourself and others, whether you did it knowingly or not, gave me the permission to start walking in that.
Wow. I'm honored. I'm honored to be a part of that group. Since you're calling people by name, I have to call by name the reason why I know you and Dr. DeLeon Gray. One of the things that he and I talked about, and I think this was also around the time I met you, is, he was exploring this idea of communalism and how, ultimately we always say, well, you can't love someone else until you learn to love yourself. And he said, well, what if we flipped it and looked at it from a communal perspective, and we said, actually, the way others love you can teach you how to love yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? Like if others are loving you well and see you and are lifting up your highest self and showing you like, look, this is who you are. You are loved by God. Like, I love you. Then sometimes you learn to love yourself that way. And I feel like that's what you're talking about too, in terms of communion, this like connection with each other, connection with God. And ultimately communion means intimacy, right? Like, we have to cultivate intimacy with each other so that we can speak to our highest selves.
Yeah. I think, we underestimate the power and the seductiveness of white supremacy, of hegemony generally, like just power and domination, racism, sexism, all of these different forms of oppression that gnaw at us daily, that prevent us from being able to be free all the time. And it's very seductive. We grew up in a world where we were told we should be acting in that way. And so we need folks, in your words, love serves as a mirror oftentimes. And it reminds us of who we are when we forget, when we're told by the world that we're not, when imposter syndrome is taken over and we are unable to move forward. The love that we get in community is that mirror that we need to be reminded of who we are.
Yeah. Those
are your words, Dr. Margaret, not mine.
I know what I said.
I wanted to make sure the people knew that. Those are your words.
Thank you for quoting me. So, Dr. Chris, I could talk to you all day about this, but this is a 30-minute show. So unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. But I do want to ask you one question before we end. And that is, love is not just this ethereal idea. It's a concept that we can bring down to earth and practice. So what does love look like for you embodied? What does it look like in your life? How are you practicing love for yourself and for others?
Yeah. Unapologetically seeking all of the things that bring me joy. So my coffee, get into it in the morning. My wine, I get into it in the evening. My vinyls, I spend time jamming to my vinyls. My candles, my sounds, like all of the different things that give me joy. I make a commitment to tap into those things for myself, not because somebody else around me enjoys them or I'm trying to woo any person. I love those things. And so I do that for myself. And then also being unapologetic about who I am. I think about love. I write about love. I speak about love. I give love to my friends. I give love to my family. I tell them how I feel about them. I remind them of how special they are. And my hope is that by walking in my truth and walking in my authenticity and tapping into love in all the different ways and varieties that we can, that it begins to trickle and folks also start living like that. That to me is the ultimate practice of love.
Yeah, being yourself.
Being who God made me to be.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Whew. I want to keep going. I want to keep going, but we cannot. Dr. Chris, I just want to thank you for being my guest on this episode. I feel like we're going to have more conversations. So maybe one day you'll join me for some live conversation, maybe where we can interact with other people. But I just really appreciate us delving into this together today. So, yeah.
And if I may, I'm gonna be quick. I just want to say publicly, what you are doing is an amazing ministry.
So, Dr. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode. I'm just so grateful for your presence. I'm grateful for your spirit, and I'm grateful for your journey. And I'm also grateful for your friendship. Thank you so much. And your love. I'm grateful for your love.
You are very welcome. Very welcome.
Wow. Love met us here today. Love opened the door for Dr. Chris and I to engage in this really wholehearted conversation. And we really wanted to just examine this force that's so deeply powerful. Love is such a powerful force that when we embrace it, we have no choice but to change. And love becomes our way of life. Love is a lifestyle. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Dr. Margaret, and until next time, live a life of love and love the life you live.